Honey, I'm just going to help myself to one of your chocolates.
Just who do you think you are?
I'm glad she asked.
I am Handyman.
Welcome back. It took about 2 months of evening and weekend work for us to get this room completed, and we're really pleased with the results. Today we're going to talk about installing this countertop, doing some carpentry, and even speaking about the wonders of plywood. But first, we got a letter from one of our viewers, Susie Durkins of Waukegan. Susie writes, "Dear Handyman, I'm confused. What's the difference between a nut, a bolt, and a washer?" Let's take a look at this clip.
This is a nut. And this is a washer. And here we see the washer bolt from the scene of the crime.
Thanks for your letter, Susie. I hope that cleared things up.
Wait, there isn't even any writing on this.
Now I'm going to create the structure that's going to hold the granite countertop above the washer and the dryer. I already have a 2x4 screwed to the wall. You might see it on the left-hand side. And right now I'm working on the 2 plywood sides. Wait, I'm ironing wood? Let's jump down into the handy cave and I'll explain why.
Plywood is a wonderful building material. It's made up of a sandwich of multiple thin layers of wood called veneers, all glued together. The grain of the wood on each layer is offset by 90 degrees from the ones above and below it, which helps prevent it from warping as much as normal wood. If we pretend this is regular wood with the grain going in only one direction, you can see that environmental changes can really make it bend and warp over time. In contrast, as I said, with plywood, we stack layer on layer with alternating grain on it, and we come up with a really stable material that doesn't warp as much. That's what makes it great for building furniture and cabinets. Depending on what grade of plywood you purchase, the outer veneers of the plywood could be a really nice material like cherry or walnut. So if you made a dresser out of a nice veneer plywood, it might look like solid cherry, but only if you looked at it from the front. On the edge, it shows all the layers of the sandwich, and it's pretty rough. So how do you disguise that rough edge? One way is with this, an iron-on veneer. The back of the veneer has a heat-activated glue, which makes it stick really well to the edge of plywood. It's a little bit wider than the plywood, so you don't have to be too precise when positioning it, but it does mean that there's a little bit of an overhang on the edge. You can remove that overhang with a razor blade or a utility knife, but in my case, I'm going to use this tool my father-in-law gave me. It has blades built into the side of it, and it'll make the job go faster and be more precise.
So now you understand about the iron, but what about that piece of paper? Well, that's because the iron is Mrs. Handyman's, and if I get any glue on her iron, I'm a dead man. And here's that cool little tool I was showing you. You just have to squeeze it together and draw it down the length of the plywood, and it'll cut off the extra veneer on the sides. Then you just want to run some sandpaper on the corners to make sure that there's no splinters left over. I was hoping to screw these sides directly into the cabinets that are on the left and right side of the washer and dryer, but the face of those cabinets protruded 1/8 of an inch, which would have given me a gap. So I went down into the handy cave and got some scrap pieces of 1/8 inch plywood and created some filler strips. So you see me gluing those up, and then we'll screw through those and everything will be straight then. With that done, I took some strips of plywood, glued and clamped them overnight, and that's going to be the front support for the granite countertop. Jumping ahead a couple of days, the support system is now complete. I glued an extra strip of plywood to the top of the side to make sure that we'd have enough surface area to support the granite there. I'm putting a generous bead of silicone around the perimeter of the structure, and this will help hold the stone in place, but will also even out any imperfections in either the wood or in my carpentry. I went to a local kitchen countertop shop to take a look at the remnants they had available. Fortunately, they have a piece that works great with the design I have in mind. It's pretty heavy, but I have 3 strong handy boys. Let's get it in. Oh no. Unfortunately, the technician didn't measure correctly, so the countertop is overlapping that side piece by about 1/4 of an inch. So I had to pull it back out, wipe off all the messy silicone, and bring it back to the countertop place for them to cut thinner. It took a week, but we got it back in place. Now it's time to install the faucet while I have plenty of light coming in through that sinkhole. I'll be trimming back the water supply lines and the drain line after I get the sink in place and I know where everything gets connected. Time to use a silicone again. I'll just put a bead around the perimeter of the sink, and then I can fit it in from below. This was supposed to be the easy part. You just position the sink in the middle of the hole and tighten the screws on the 4 corner brackets, and everything would be held in place. Well, it didn't work out that way. The brackets kept on popping out of the slots, and I finally had to give up on it. Instead, I had to get some scraps of wood and shove them in the cabinet underneath the sink to press it up against the bottom of the countertop until the silicone dried the next day. After it dried, I could take the wood out and the sink was held securely in place, and then I could hook up the rest of the plumbing. In between working on the support system for the countertop, I started working on putting together a bench on the left wall and the cubbies that would be above it. First up was to attach the ledger board to the wall. Behind the drywall are vertical lengths of wood called studs. The studs are structural elements and they can support a lot of weight, so I'm attaching the ledger board to them so it could distribute the load of the bench across several of them. I had some leftover metal balusters from our deck project that I thought would be great to use for making a shoe rack underneath the bench. I cut some scraps of wood to fit underneath the bench, and these will be the brackets that hold the balusters in place. I'll drill holes in these for the balusters, but they have to be precisely located so that the balusters will be straight underneath the bench. How are we going to do it? Well, I'm going to clamp the boards together, then I can drive a screw temporarily through the boards, and that'll hold them together for me. Then I could treat the whole thing as a single unit for drilling purposes. I'm using a drill press which keeps my holes straight, but you could use a handheld drill to do the same thing. I'm using a spade bit to cut the hole. They come in a variety of sizes. I just had to get one that was the same diameter as the baluster. Okay, let's pull these apart and see if I was right about the alignment. Well, that doesn't look bad. Let's get that bench in there now. Now I can start building out the shelving that's going to hold the baskets Mrs. Handyman likes. Oops, looks like I forgot to get some footage of making the faces for the shelves. Sorry about that.
One of the tenets of being a DIYer is saving money by doing the job yourself, but another is making the most of the resources you have. So I'm reusing parts of the cabinets my father-in-law made for us to construct this set of shelves behind us. It's going to save us some money. Thanks, Dad.
Time to install those shoe racks. Boy, am I glad I kept those extra balusters. They've really come in handy. I'm using an air-powered pin nailer to put in the super skinny fasteners to hold the trim to the wood behind it, but you could use a hammer and nail instead. With Mrs. Handyman's help, I'm adding a piece of trim to the front of the plywood bench to make it look like it's a thicker piece of wood. Now back to one of my air-powered tools. I just love using these things.
The lion's share of the work is almost complete. Cabinetry, plumbing, electrical, carpentry, countertops, got a lot of it done. Then I started looking at this wall over here, and that's when the battle began with my practical side Buck and my artistic side Louie. Boy, don't do it. What? What exactly is wrong with that wall? Well, I was talking to Louie about it.
Louis?
It's Louis. Yeah. So, Louis. There ain't nothing wrong with that wall.
Of course there's something wrong with this wall, moron. It has no soul.
Wait, you call me a moron? I ain't the one talking about some inanimate object having no soul. There ain't nothing wrong with having a painted wall.
Paint? Paint? Not only does this wall have no soul, you, my friend, have no heart.
And still, there ain't nothing wrong with a painted wall.
But listen here, Buck. There'll be water here. I think in this environment, a tile wall might be a better choice.
Well, I'll be dadgummed. What? You done actually said something that made sense.
Of course that makes sense. I always make sense. Now we take these little mock-ups for where the accent tiles would go.
Wait a minute, what are you talking about now, boy?
The accent tiles?
Yes, the accent tiles. You didn't say nothing about them.
Well, you see, to go with the Scandinavian design influence, I thought I'd put in a couple of Delft tiles here and here to tie into the cobalt blue paint.
And?
Well, there was one other thing.
It's little. Very little.
I'm listening.
Well, over here we would get the nice little tile tableau from the Netherlands and inset it here right above the sink.
Let me get this right. In this laundry room, attached to a garage that nobody spends no time in,
you want to put some antique tiles above a sink where people are going to be washing out some paintbrushes. I guess that's going to supply that missing soul you keep talking about.
Now you're getting it. Boy, I think you're the one who needs to get it right upside the head.
So, yeah, I think I'll be putting in some tiles there.
Thanks for joining me. If you enjoyed this video, would you consider liking and subscribing? Remember, if Handyman can do these things, so can you. See you next time.